So you've removed the restrictions on your exhaust pipe by replacing the slip-on and maybe some more modifications. But what about the intake side? What are your options there to actually get more air into the engine to generate more power? For most people, the first step is either to upgrade the air filter or to put in an airbox lid modification. What are those? Which should you choose? Let's have a look. Now this is the airbox from the 390 Duke from 2017 onwards. It's important to know that if you have an earlier bike that's up to 2016, it has a different airbox. So what you can do to it is going to be slightly different. I will try and cover that a little bit, but this is mainly aimed at the later Dukes. Now, to change the filter, you would remove the airbox lid. And down inside here is where the airbox filter lives. So it lives there. Important note for these Dukes is that the air intake is here underneath the filter, and the airflow comes up through the filter, down through the airbox and out of this pipe here. On the early Dukes up to 2016, the air flowed the other way. It flowed in through this lid, through the filter and then out. And it's important to know the direction the air flows, because I've seen a number of people make the mistake of taking this lid off, throwing it away, drilling holes in it or similar, thinking that they're going to improve the airflow into the filter. But of course it's wrong. If you take this off or make holes in it, then nothing is going to go through your air filter, because it's all going to get sucked in here and straight into the engine with no filtration. If you've got a pretty stock bike, then the place to start, in my opinion, is not the air filter, which is the common choice for most people when modifying. This is a DNA air filter. It replaces the stock one. The advantage of it is that it flows more air and you don't have to change it. You clean it occasionally, but you don't have to throw it away like you do the stock one. The disadvantage is that it's pretty expensive, and some would say, accurately I believe, that this doesn't filter as well. If you really want to keep your bike for a very long time and do very high mileages on it, then you might want to stick with a completely stock bike with the stock filtration system, because in order to flow more air, you might argue that it will let through very, very fine particles, which then could wear your engine. However, I run them. But what I would recommend, if you've got a stock bike, is that you go for an airbox lid like this. Now, this actually happens to be a printed plastic part, and I've seen a lot of people actually do it, but it's got a foam back on it, and this is airbox foam. It's not just any foam, so it does let air through, protects a little bit from moisture, and works very well. There are a number of suppliers of these. Kuba is probably the best well known. Bagaros Performance make one, slightly different design, but there's a number of them out there. This is a pretty good upgrade for a stock bike because it lets air through. It definitely increases the inflow into your bike, but it's not over the top on the actual airflow in. If you replace the stock paper filter with one of these, then it'll do a similar job. So if you're modifying and you've got a completely stock bike, then either of these will do the job for you. If you've made any other modifications to your bike, such as a new slip-on, cap deletes, anything like this, then you should be running a fueling mod when you fit these devices. You need a fueling device because you'll be sucking additional air into the engine, making the mixture leaner. It needs to be made richer, and you can't guarantee that the stock map is going to do that for you. But what about the ultimate in terms of air intake? Well, what I run is I run a DNA filter, and I no longer run one of these. Now I run a DNA airbox lid. So this replaces your airbox lid and a lot of air goes through it. It does make the bike surprisingly more noisy. You can hear the air being sucked through this when you're sitting on the bike. So there are your options, but one word of caution. If you're running something like this, especially if like me you're running in conjunction with this, then the chances are you are flowing too much air into the engine, more air than the stock fuel injection can cope with. So if you're going to do this, you want to start thinking about upgrading your fuel injector to a larger one. And for that, of course, you definitely need some form of piggyback fueling device or a rewritten ECU if that's the route you really want to go, but you definitely need to adjust the mapping to allow more fuel into the engine when it needs it. In the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about modding the AIRBOX and what's important to do and what's not to do, because there are some definite don'ts, in my opinion, when doing custom mods beyond what I've spoken about here to the AIRBOX. So thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.